Okay. Chapter 7. Chaz, you're going to like this one.
Woo!
Queer lodgings.
Woo!
Okay. It's almost June. The next morning, Bilbo woke up with the early sun in his eyes. He jumped up to look at the time and to go and put his kettle on, and found he was not home at all.
Goodbye,
So-
you stupid fruit.
So he sat down and wished in vain for a wash and a brush. He did not get either, nor tea, nor toast, nor bacon for his breakfast, only cold mutton and rabbit. And after that, he had to get ready for a fresh start. This time he was allowed to climb onto an eagle's back and cling between his wings. The air rushed over him and he shut his eyes. The dwarves were crying farewells and promising to repay the Lord of the Eagles if ever they could, as off rose 15 great birds from the mountain's side. The sun was still close to the eastern edge of things. The morning was cool, and mists were in the valleys and hollows entwined here and there about the peaks and pinnacles of the hills. Bilbo opened an eye to peep and saw that the birds were already high up and the world was far away, and the mountains were falling back behind them into the distance. He shut his eyes again and held on tighter. "Don't pinch," said his eagle. "You need not be frightened like a rabbit, even if you look rather like one. It is a fair morning with little wind. What is finer than flying?" Bilbo would have liked to say, "A warm bath and late breakfast on the lawn afterwards," but he thought it better to say nothing at all and to let go his clutch just a tiny bit. After a good while, the eagles must have seen the point they were making for, even from their great height, for they began to go down, circling round in great spirals. They did this for a long while, and at last the hobbit opened his eyes again. The earth was much nearer, and below them were trees that looked like oaks and elms, and wide grasslands, and a river running through it all. But cropping out of the ground, right in the path of the stream which looped itself about, was a great rock, almost a hill of stone, like a last outpost of the distant mountains, or a huge piece cast miles into the plain by some giant among giants. Quickly now to the top of this rock the eagles swooped one by one and sat down their passengers. "Farewell," they cried, "wherever you fare, till your eyries receive you at the journey's end." This is the polite thing to say among eagles. "May the winds walk under your wings, bear you where the sun sails and the moon walks," answered Gandalf, who knew the correct reply. And so they parted. And though the Lord of the Eagles became in after days the king of all birds, and wore a golden crown, and his 15 chieftains golden collars made of the gold that the dwarves gave them, Bilbo never saw them again, except high and far off in the battle of 5 armies. But as that comes in at the end of this tale, we will say no more about it just now. There was a flat space on the top of the hill of a stone, and a well-worn path with many steps leading down it to the river, across which a ford of huge flat stones led to the grassland beyond the stream. There was a little cave, a wholesome one with a pebbly floor, at the foot of the steps and near the end of the stony ford. Here the party gathered and discussed what was to be done. "I always meant to see you all safe, if possible, over the mountains," said the wizard. "And now, by good management and good luck, I have done it. Indeed, we are now a good deal further east than I ever meant to come with you, for after all, this is not my adventure. I may look in on it again before it is all over, but in the meantime, I have some other pressing business to attend to." The dwarves groaned and looked most distressed, and Bilbo wept. They had begun to think Gandalf was going to come all the way and would always be there to help them out of difficulties. "I am not going to disappear this very instant," said he. "I can give you a day or 2 more. Probably I can help you out of your present plight. And I need a little help myself. We have no food and no baggage, and no ponies to ride, and you don't know where you are. Now I can tell you that. You are still some miles north of the path which we should have been following, if we had not left the mountain pass in a hurry. Very few people live in these parts, unless they have come here since I was last down this way, which is some years ago. But there is somebody that I know of who lives not far away. That somebody made the steps on the great rock. The Curragh, I believe he calls it. He does not come here often, certainly not in the daytime, and it is no good waiting for him. In fact, it would be very dangerous. We must go and find him, and if all goes well at our meeting, I think I shall be off and wish you, like the eagles, farewell wherever you fare." They begged him not to leave them. They offered him dragon gold and silver and jewels, but he would not change his mind. "We shall see, he said, "and I think I have earned already some of your dragon gold, when you have got it." After that, they stopped pleading. Then they took off their clothes and bathed in the river, which was shallow and clear and stony at the ford. When they had dried in the sun, which was now strong and warm, they were refreshed, if still sore and a little hungry. Soon they crossed the ford, carrying the hobbit, and then began to march along through the long green grass and down the lines of the wide-armed oaks and the tall elms. "And why is it called the Carrock?" asked Bilbo, as he went along at the wizard's side. "He called it the Carrock because Carrock is his word for it. He calls things like that Carrocks, and this one is the Carrock because it is the only one near his home, and he knows it well." "Who calls it? Who knows it?" "The somebody I spoke of. A very great person. You must all be very polite when I introduce you. I shall introduce you slowly, 2 by 2, I think, and you must be careful not to annoy him, or heaven knows what will happen. He can be appalling when he is angry, though he is kind enough if humored. Still, I warn you, he gets angry easily." The dwarves all gathered round when they heard the wizard talking
He's just like me.
talking like this to Bilbo. "Is that the person you're taking to us? Is that the person you're taking us to now?" they asked. "Couldn't you find someone more easy-tempered? Hadn't you better explain it all a bit clearer?" And so on. "Yes, it certainly is. No, I could not. And I was explaining very carefully," answered the wizard crossly. "If you must know more, his name is Bjorn. He is very strong.
Just like mine.
And he is a skin changer. Your name is
Just
not
like
Bjorn.
me.
Wait. What? A furrier? A man that calls rabbits conies when he doesn't turn their skins into squirrels?" asked Bilbo. "Good gracious heavens, no, said Gandalf. "Don't be a fool, Mr. Baggins, if you could help it. And in the name of all wonder, don't mention the word furrier again as long as you are within 100 miles of his house. Nor rug, cape, tippet, muff, nor any other such unfortunate word. He is a skin changer. He changes his skin. Sometimes he is a huge
like
black
me.
bear. Sometimes he is a great strong black-haired man with huge arms and a great beard. I cannot tell you much more, though that ought to be enough. Some say that he is a bear descended from the great and ancient bears of the mountains that lived there before the giants came. Others say that he is a man descended from the first men who lived before Smaug or the other dragons came into this part of the world, and before the goblins came into the hills out of the north. I cannot say. Really?
Yeah.
Though I fancy the last is the true tale. He is not the sort of person to ask questions of. At any rate, he is under no enchantment but his own. He lives in an oak wood and has a great wooden house, and as a man he keeps cattle and horses which are nearly as marvelous as himself. They work for him and talk to him. He does not eat them, neither does he hunt or eat wild animals. He keeps hives and hives of great fierce bees, and lives most on cream and honey. As a bear, he ranges far and wide. I once saw him sitting all alone on the top of the Carrock at night, watching the moon sinking toward the misty mountains, and I heard him growl in the tongue of bears. The day will come when they will perish, and I shall go back. That is why I believe he once came from the mountains himself." Bilbo and the dwarves now had plenty to think about, and they asked no more questions. They still had a long way to walk before them. Up slope and down dale they plodded. It grew very hot. Sometimes they rested under the trees, and then Bilbo felt so hungry that he would have eaten acorns if any had been ripe enough yet to have fallen to the ground. It was the middle of the afternoon before they noticed the great patches of flowers had begun to spring up, all the same kinds growing together as if they had been planted. Especially there was clover, waving patches of coxcomb clover and purple clover, and wide stretches of short white sweet honey-smelling clover. There was a buzzing and a whirring and a droning in the air. Bees were busy everywhere, and such bees! Bilbo had never seen anything like them. If one was to sting me, he thought, I should swell up as big again as I am. They were bigger than hornets. The drones were bigger than your thumb. a good deal, and the bands of yellow on their deep black bodies shone like fiery gold. "We are getting near," said Gandalf. "We are on the edge of his bee pastures." After a while they came to a belt of tall and very ancient oaks, and beyond these to a high thorn hedge through which you could neither see nor scramble. "You had better wait here," said the wizard to the dwarves, "and when I call or whistle, begin to come after me. You will see the way I go, but only in pairs, mind, about 5 minutes between each of you. Bomber is fattest and will do for two. He had better come alone and last. Come on, Mr. Baggins. There is a gate somewhere round this way." And with that he went off along the hedge, taking the frightened hobbit with him. They soon came to a wooden gate, high and broad, beyond which they could see gardens and a cluster of low wooden buildings, some thatched and made of unshaped logs, barns, stables, sheds, and a long, low wooden house. Inside, on the southward side of the great hedge, were rows and rows of hives with bell-shaped tops made of straw. The noise of the giant bees flying to and fro and crawling in and out filled all the air. The wizard and the hobbit pushed open the heavy creaking gate and went down a wide track toward the house. Some horses, very sleek and well-groomed, trotted up across the grass and looked at them intently with very intelligent faces. Then off they galloped to the buildings. "They have gone to tell him of the arrival of strangers," said Gandalf. Soon they reached a courtyard, 3 walls of which were formed by the wooden house and its 2 long wings. In the middle there was lying a great oak trunk with many lopped branches beside it. Standing near was a huge man with a thick black beard and hair, and great bare arms and legs with knotted muscles. He was clothed in a tunic of wool.
Just like me.
He's just like you. He was clothed in a tunic of wool down to his knees and was leaning on a large axe. The horses were standing by him with their noses at his shoulders. "Ah, here they are," he said to the horses. What voice should I do for this dude?
Scottish.
I cannot do Scottish. I'm terrible at it.
Do it, mother. Do it.
It's just going to blend with the
Do it. Spot points.
Here they are, he said to the horses. "They don't look dangerous. You can be off." He laughed a great rolling laugh, put down his axe, and came forward. "Who are you and what do you want?" "There we go," he asked gruffly, standing in front of them and towering tall above Gandalf. As for Bilbo, he could easily have trotted through his legs without ducking his head to miss the fringe of the man's brown tunic. "I am Gandalf," said the wizard. "Never heard of him," growled the man. "And what's this little fella?" he said, stooping down to frown at the hobbit with his bushy black eyebrows. "That is Mr. Baggins, a hobbit of good family and unimpeachable reputation," said Gandalf. Bilbo bowed. He had no hat to take off and was painfully conscious of his many missing buttons. "I am a wizard," continued Gandalf. "I have heard of you if you have not heard of me. But perhaps you have heard of my good cousin Radagast, who lives near the southern borders of Mirkwood." "Yes, not a bad fellow as wizards go, I believe. I used to see him now and again," said Bjorn. "Well, now I know who you are, and who you say you are. What do you want?" "Oh, to tell you the truth, we have lost our luggage and nearly lost our way, and are rather in need of help, or at least of advice. I may say we have had a rather bad time with goblins in the mountains." "Goblins?" said the big man less gruffly. "Oh, so you've been having trouble with them, have you? What did you go near them for?" "We did not mean to. They surprised us at night in a pass which we had to cross. We were coming out of the lands over west into these countries. It is a long tale." "Then you'd better come inside and tell me some of it, if it won't take all day," said the man, leading the way through a dark door that opened out of the courtyard into the house. Following him, they found themselves in a wide hall with a fireplace in the middle. Though it was summer, there was a wood fire burning, and the smoke was rising to the blackened rafters in search of the way out through an opening in the roof. They passed through this dim hall, lit only by the fire and a hole above it, and came through another smaller door into a sort of veranda propped on wooden posts made of single tree trunks. It faced south and was still warm and filled with the light of the westering sun, which slanted into it and fell golden on the garden full of flowers that came right up to the steps. Here they sat on wooden benches while Gandalf began his tale, and Bilbo swung his dangling legs and looked at the flowers in the garden, wondering what their names could be, as he had never seen half of them before. "I was coming over the mountains with a friend or two," said the wizard. "Or two? I can only see the one, and a little one at that," said Bjorn. Well, to tell you the truth, I did not like to bother you with the lot of us until I found out if you were busy. I will give a call if I may. Go on, call away. So Gandalf gave a long, shrill whistle, and presently Thorin and Dori came round the house by the garden path and stood bowing low before them. 1 or 3, you meant, I see, said Bjorn. Nope, that's not it. I can't do it.
Do it!
1 or 3, you meant, I see, said Bjorn. But these aren't hobbits, they're dwarves. Thorin Oakenshield, at your service. Dori at your service, said the 2 dwarves, bowing again. I don't need your service, thank you, said Bjorn, but I expect you need mine. I'm not over fond of dwarves, but it is true you are Thorin, son of Thrain, son of Thror, I believe, and that your companion is respectable, and that your enemies of goblins are not up to any mischief in my lands. What are you up to, by the way? They're on their way to visit the land of their fathers, away east there!
Do it!
Away east beyond Mirkwood. But no, it's so terrible, put in Gandalf. And it is entirely an accident that we are in your lands at all. We were crossing by the high pass that should have brought us to the road that lies in the south of your country, when we were attacked by evil goblins, as I was about to tell you. Go on telling then, said Bjorn, who was never very polite. There was a terrible storm. The stone giants were out hurling rocks, and at the head of the pass we took refuge in a cave, the hobbit and I and several of our companions. Do you call 2 several? Well, no, as a matter of fact, there were more than 2. Where are they? Killed, gone home? Well, no, they don't seem all to have come when I whistled. Shy, I expect. You see, we are very much afraid that we are rather a lot for you to entertain. Go on, whistle again. I'm in for a party, it seems, and 1 or 2 more won't make much difference, growled Bjorn. Gandalf whistled again, but Nori and Ori were there almost before he had stopped, for if you remember, Gandalf had told them to come in pairs every 5 minutes. Hello, said Bjorn, you came pretty quick. Where were you hiding? Come on, my jack-in-the-boxes. Nori at your service. Ori at they began, but Bjorn interrupted them. Thank you. When I want your help, I will ask for it. Sit down and let's get on with this tale, or it will be supper time before it's ended. As soon as we were asleep, went on Gandalf, a crack at the back of the cave opened. Goblins came out and grabbed the hobbit and the dwarves and our troop of ponies. Troop of ponies? What were you, a traveling circus? Or were you carrying a lot of goods? Or do you always call 6 a troop? Oh, no. As a matter of fact, there were more than 6 ponies, for there were more than 6 of us, and, well, here are 2 more. Just at that moment, Balin and Dwalin appeared and bowed so low that their beards swept the stone floor. The big man was frowning at first, but they did their best to be frightfully polite, and kept on nodding and bending and bowing and waving their hoods before their knees in proper dwarf fashion, till he stopped frowning and burst into a chuckling laugh. They looked so comical. Troop was right, he said, a fine comic one. Come in, my merry men, what are your names? I don't want your service just now, only your names, and then sit down and stop wagging. Balin and Dwalin, they said, not daring to be offended, and sat flop on the floor, looking rather surprised. Now, go on again, said Bjorn to the wizard.
There's more of them!
Where was I? Oh, yes. I was not grabbed. I killed a goblin or 2 with a flash. Good, growled Bjorn. It is some good being a wizard, then. And slipped inside the crack before it closed. I followed down into the main hall, which was crowded with goblins. The great goblin was there with 30 or 40 armed guards. I thought to myself, even if they were not all chained together, what could a dozen do against so many? A dozen? That's the first time I've heard 8 called a dozen. Or have you still got some more jacks that haven't yet come out of their boxes? Well, yes, there seem to be a couple more here now. Feely and Keely, I believe, said Gandalf as these 2 now appeared and stood smiling and bowing. That's enough, said Bjorn. Sit down and be quiet. Now go on, Gandalf. So Gandalf went on with the tale until he came to the fight in the dark and the discovery of the lower gate, and their horror when they found that Mr. Baggins had been mislaid. We counted ourselves and found that there was no hobbit. There were only 14 of us left. 14? That's the first time I've heard 1 from 10 leave 14. You mean 9, or else you haven't told me yet all the names of your party. Well, of course, you haven't seen Owen and Glowin yet, and bless me, here they are. I hope you will forgive them for bothering you. Oh, let 'em all come. Hurry up. Come along, you two, and sit down. But look here, Gandalf. Even now we have only got yourselves and 10 dwarves and the hobbit that was lost. That only makes 11 plus 1 mislaid, and not 14, unless wizards count differently to other people. But now please get on with the tale. Bjorn did not show it more than he could help, but really he had begun to get very interested. You see, in the old days he had known the very part of the mountains that Gandalf was describing. He nodded and he growled when he heard of the hobbits' reappearance, and of their scramble down the stone slide, and of the wolf ring in the woods. When Gandalf came to their climbing into trees with the wolves all underneath, he got up and strode about and muttered, I wish I had been there. I would have given them more than fireworks. Well, said Gandalf, very glad to see that his tale was making a good impression, I did the best I could. There we were with the wolves going mad underneath us, and the forest beginning to blaze in places, when the goblins came down from the hills and discovered us. They yelled with delight and sang songs making fun of us. 15 birds and 5 fir trees. Good heavens, growled Bjorn. Don't pretend that goblins can't count. They can. 12 isn't 15, and they know it. And so do I. There were Biffer and Boffer as well. I managed to introduce them before. Here they are. In came Biffer and Boffer. And me, gasped Bomber, puffing up behind.
This is my favorite bit.
He was fat and also angry at being left till last. He refused to wait 5 minutes and followed immediately after the other two. Well, now there are 15 of you, and since goblins can count, I suppose that is all there were up the trees. Now perhaps we can finish this story without any more interruptions. Mr. Baggins saw then how clever Gandalf had been. The interruptions had really made Bjorn more interested in the story, and the story had kept him from sending the dwarves off at once like suspicious beggars. He never invited people into his house if he could help it. He had very few friends, and they lived a good way away, and he never invited more than a couple of these to his house at a time. Now he had got 15 strangers sitting in his porch. By the time the wizard had finished his tale and had told of the eagle's rescue and of how they had all been brought to the Karrak, the sun had fallen behind the peaks of the misty mountains, and the shadows were long in Bjorn's garden. A very good tale, said he, the best I've heard for a long while. If all beggars could tell such a good one, they might find me kinder. You may be making it all up, of course, but you deserve a supper for the story all the same. Let's have something to eat. Yes, please, they all said together. Thank you very much.
And out comes you.